Hello and welcome to this exam question video. Today we're looking at 16.4 from the AQA GCSE paper, and this question is asking us about a movement type, and more specifically it's asking about abduction. But take a step back, it's important for you to know the definitions for all of the different types of movement inside the body, or the main ones at least. You don't need to go into too much detail, but the key ones that you'll need are horizontal, flexion extension, abduction, adduction, rotation, circumduction, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. So as long as you know those, you'll be okay for your exam. Now this one is asking about abduction, and like most movements, we do have pairs of movement actions that work together. And we'll cover the pair or the partner in a second. But for abduction, I'll quickly jump into the whiteboard, and I've got a stick person on the screen here. And for abduction, what we need to be thinking about is the first half of that word, where we have abduct, well, that means to take away. But take away from what? Well, inside of our body and inside all of our limbs, we have these imaginary mid-lines. If I want to put a dashed line running down the middle or through the centre of this person, that would be the mid-line of their body. So any sort of action that moves sort of perpendicularly away from that midline, we would class as abduction. We are taking away the limb from the midline. So if this person's arm was to raise up away from their pocket, then we would class that as abduction. Now if they were to raise this arm forwards in front of them, so we would be looking down almost there, if I put it in blue, we'd almost be looking at their fist and then their arm going straight back into their shoulder, that wouldn't be abduction because we haven't moved the arm away from that midline. Okay, in that scenario there, we're actually flexing or causing flexion at the shoulder joint. So abduction means to take away from the midline. Now what we could argue is that in 1, 2, 3, 4, in the hand, obviously when we start to splay or spread our fingers, and the same with our toes, well, if our hand is in this particular place here and some of the fingers splay inwards, is that still abduction or is that adduction? Well, in that scenario there, we would look at a more centralised midline to that specific limb. So then when those fingers were to splay, then all of them, as they extend or move outwards, then we would class all of those finger movements as local abduction. Now I've used the word there, adduction. That's the opposite of everything that we've spoken about so far. So if we were to take this red arm that we drew here, and we were to bring it back down in the direction of the sides of the body, or back down to the pockets, back in towards this midline, what we're doing is adding it back to the middle of our body. So adding something back into the middle, we refer to as adduction. Whereas if we are taking it away, then we are abducting it. That first half of that word, abduction, to abduct means to take away. So define abduction, it's the movement of a limb away from the midline or centre line of the body perpendicular to it. Use a sporting example in your answer. So when in sport does an arm at the shoulder joint abduct, or at the hip joint, when do the legs abduct? An easy example would be a star jump, or perhaps in gymnastics, or perhaps in the rings on the gymnastics when they perform a crucifix position on the rings. It could be in a swimming stroke. That's a little bit more complex because you've got multiple movements occurring, but as we go out into breaststroke, obviously when you're lying flat, then your femur would be coming upwards as you extend into that dive position. So abduction, the removal or the movement of a limb, such as the arm or the legs, away from that midline of the body. And then adduction, which is the opposite, is the movement of the limb back in towards that middle line perpendicular to the body. When do we use it in sport? A star jump, or perhaps a dive position in swimming. For adduction, it would be the pull stroke of breaststroke in swimming, or it could be the return from the star-shaped position back into a straight or soldier-shaped position. And that's that. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye for now.